We're only 5 weeks away from the chassis reveal of the 2026 Pool Boys RC Speedrun Challenge. And it's only 9 weeks to the start of the main event. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do right now to give yourself a head start in that speedrun challenge. The Pool Boys RC Speedrun Challenge is first and foremost a fun event where guys and girls across the globe make radio-controlled cars go faster than their manufacturers ever dreamed possible. There'll be joy and laughter, and there'll be tears and support from the group to get over it and brush ourselves down and get going and put out faster times and ever faster times. At the beginning of the proceedings, each of us will set our own goals, things that we want to achieve, whether that's doing the fastest time on drift tyres, whether that's doing the whole thing on a 380 motor, whether somebody wants to do it on a mechanical speed control all the way through. There's going to be some weirdness and nonsense, and it's all part and parcel of the event. But that said, I'm going to share with you here 5 things that beginners can do, that masters can do, 5 things that you can do right now to give you the best chance of success. Number 1, the single most important thing that you can do, and I guarantee you can do this right now, is to find out where you are going to run your car with speeds of up to or even beyond 100 miles an hour. These are not things that you can do in small car parks, but there's 3 things that you need to know about the location that you're going to find, the perfect location. Number 1 is going to be flat. It's going to be smooth and flat. If it doesn't meet that, you're going to be struggling. Now, I know some people have run theirs across fields. Do your best to find a flat one. The second thing you're going to want to find is somewhere that's long, somewhere that you can accelerate up to speed, hold the speed, and allow the car to come to a standstill thereafter. Quite often you can't hit the brakes in the way that you would want to, certainly not the way you'd expect to be able to if the car were moving slower to begin with. And the third thing, if at all possible, is to get somewhere that's got some amount of width to it. Now, I was very fortunate in my previous event. I found a local road that was the best part of closed, 400 metres long and a dual lane wide. That was ideal for me for last year. Depends what the car's going to be, whether we need more space or less space. I do know, for example, Tom Lee drove an hour to his location. Now, I'm not promising that I'm going to drive an hour. I didn't do it last year and I don't plan to do it this year. But it gives you some amount of idea of like what constitutes the perfect location. Really does want to meet those 3 things of being smooth, flat, long and wide if at all possible. Number 2, the second most important thing is talking about motors. Now, many experienced guys here are going to already know about what they want from a motor. There's 2 things to consider. Are you entering the brushed class, as in with a traditional brushed motor, the kind of thing you'd get from a Tamiya kit? That's your traditional motor, the kind of thing that you would have had back in the day, the kind of thing that's the same as a sport tuned or a torque tuned Tamiya motor. In those rules, and I guess for brushless as well, smaller number is generally king. So the number of turns of a motor describes to you how much it's got as its top end. If you could possibly find an 8 turn, and I know they exist on Amazon, that's going to be somewhere near the fastest. Now, it's not quite that straightforward. One manufacturer's 8 turn might be the same as another manufacturer's 12 turn. And when you're looking into these things, the difference between a stock and a modified motor is generally what you can do in terms of additional timing or advance on the electrics. With a modified motor, you can turn the end bell to increase the timing on it and therefore get yourself more power at the cost of more current. But in general, small turns is better for this purpose. I guess not for all events. For a speed run, small turns is better. I do know for the fastest brush guys, they are using new old stock LRP motors and things like that. So there might be like a 10 or a 12 turn is kind of the sweet spot of a good motor. You can find fewer turns. Are they any better? I think the Amazon 8 turn motors were producing something like 40, 50 mile an hour Hornets and Grasshoppers last time out. Now the other direction is to go for something that's brushless. These are just 2. I think this is a 10.5 turn I've got as one of my race motors. I also have here a 5.5 turn. What's this one? 5.5 turn brushless motor. If you can, and if you're going to be picking up a motor, pick up something that's censored, preferably over sensorless. It's a smoother motor if you have censored. And you're also able to do more things with it in terms of timing. So like we're talking about for the brushed motors, you can turn the end bell Quite often on a brushless motor you can do the same thing about setting advance on the motor itself. Not so much this one. This one I can see that I've got the ability to change the end bell, loosen the screws on the end bell, and then change the motor timing on there. With a sensored motor you can also change the timing electronically, so through the speedo itself. The thing to know, if you were going out to buy a motor, I do rate these Rocket RC ones, Sapel's Hobby Rocket RCs. Tom Lee ran a 3.5 turn Rocket RC in his car, and I don't 83 miles an hour or something exciting. So these are cheap. These are from AliExpress and similar kind of from China. These are like £30-35 tops, and I'll talk about the ESC to go with them shortly. But that's a bargain of a motor for the performance it can put out. Now, I've said it's a fun event. You don't have to go buying a motor. If you are going to buy a motor, bear in mind, brushed, there are some bargains to be had. You might be kind of limited about what you can find. Brushless, I would strongly recommend these Rocket RCs, but something you've already got. Like I say, I've got this 5.5 turn Speed Passion that came from an eBay purchase along the way, and frankly, it might be a good bet for me. Number 3 on the list is ESCs. Now, in general, you're going to end up with an ESC specific to the type of motor you're going to go with. So for a brushed motor, you have a brushed ESC. For a brushless motor, you have a brushless ESC. There's all manner of them. The best brushed ESCs are ones that are no longer being manufactured. I can't really advise on those. What I will say is the absolute standard Hobbywing 1060 will get you a long way in terms of what brush motors it will run with. The very fast 8 turns is probably limiting about what it can do. This is 60 amp ESC. There is a Hobbywing 1080, which I think is an 80 amp ESC. That will give you a bit more headroom. Depends on the motor that you're going to be running. If you're running brushed, I might be tempted not to rush out and buy a ESC right now. You'll get a decent wave with the 1060 that you've probably already got in your collection. There is a great video by Nick Tiny, and I'll put in the description or in the comments, where he talked last year about motors and ESCs. Go watch that if you're interested in what to look for brushed ESCs. For brushless, there's a great many on the market. The standard ones that we always use in racing are the Hobbywing, so the 10BL 60 and the 10BL 120. And they are great, and they are a reasonable price point. Nothing wrong with it at all. I strongly recommend those if you're going out to buy one anyway, they're a good, sensible price point of, in the UK, like £50, something like that for one of those. And they will do everything you need. I found a bit of a bargain to go with my Rocket RC motor. They also do Rocket RC ESCs. Now, I ran a 120 amp ESC in my Grasshopper last year, and it was almost good enough. And what I actually ran into is it hit a cutout through advanced timing. So I'm running 3S, running advanced timing. I hit a cutout and it shut down. So and that was on my final run, and it killed off my final run. So since then, they have released this 130 amp version, and it's got way more programmability to it. So that's my new go-to for speed runs. It's my go-to actually for racing. This is the one I tend to use because it's a 35 pound ESC. So you combine that with the same cost motor, and it's an absolute bargain. Maybe it's a bit much for looking at going, well, it's a starter for a speedrun challenge. You will continue to use these somewhere along the way. So that's my recommendation for an entry point. It's censored, goes with a censored motor. These actually only work with censored motors. But the advantage is you've got access to boost timing, which is all range increase. So where I've got some timing I can set in the can, I can set additional timing via the ESC. And it also has turbo timing, which comes in when you're only when you're on full throttle, and this has the ability to program how it comes in, so it's staggered, so you don't get it all in one lump. So if you've got the room, it can be quite a nicer way of letting the power in more gently. Extra 10 amps of headroom. Who knows whether these are actually capable of the 130 amps they claim? I don't know. I believe I got close. I do know you can go overboard. The Tomley car here, thank you Phil, it still has it in it. That's got a Castle Creations ESC in it, which has got telemetry and all that kind of stuff, so you can find out after the fact what RPMs the motor was pulling, all of that kind of magic stuff, which is great, but a step beyond I'm able to focus on right now, and I expect many of you the same. But yeah, some of those Castle Creation ones are really great for the extra information you can get from them to analyse your runs. The other thing that fits in that same space of things that you can investigate and potentially invest in now is the battery themselves. Now, there are two things to think about battery wise, and it mostly depends on your level of comfort with batteries. The obvious and historical choice is, typical rounded NIM batteries like we have here. This is 5,000 milliamp hour. This is a 3,000. The 5,000 will last longer. Will it give up its current better? It's going to be much of a muchness. The 3,000 is way lighter, and I would be very tempted to actually go at it in that sense. You can analyze these and see what the overall resistance and things like that is like. I wouldn't worry too much. If you want to stay with a NIM battery, I would just say pick up whichever one you're happy with. In terms of speed running, you're not going to run out of power out of these. In fact, what you're more likely to want to do is charge them fully up, do a run, and top up the charge for subsequent runs. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter what capacity you've got. You're not going to run out. And then on lipos, there's a couple of things to consider. And with me saying this ahead of even knowing what the chassis is going to be somewhat cautious, because you may find the batteries and things you choose won't fit. So I'll mention a couple of things in that space that might help, but I'll talk a bit about lipo technology anyway. So here are a couple of examples of lipos. A 4200 milliamp hour there in a rounded one. This does fit in all Tamiyas. You can also get like squared off versions. This is much more restricted. You can't fit this into we're not going to be speed running Avantis, but this won't fit in an Avanti, and it also won't fit in anything that needs the rounded off battery tray, for example. So bear that in mind. Now, I'm confident the rules will say we're allowed to chop around battery trays to make these fit. So TTO2s, this would be fine if it fits fine. So bear in mind, if you're wanting to get new batteries now, bear in mind that rounded might be the way to go. However, there is a caveat that comes with them. So the bottom one here is a 50C, the top one is a 100C. On cheap batteries like that, it's probably not accurate in terms of its overall rating. However, that's an indication as to what current they're able to sustain. And with all of these lipos, the C is a function of whatever the capacity of the battery is as well. So you're looking here at 50C being half as much C as this one, but it's also a smaller capacity, so less so. I ought to put on screen some of the maths for it. In principle, you've got to play off the two things. One is the higher the C rating, the better, but the C is also a function of whatever the battery capacity is. So a high C rating on a lower capacity battery might work out the same as a low C rating on a higher capacity battery. The same is true as the NIMs, in that the high capacity batteries are bigger and heavier. Shouldn't matter so much for speed running. It will change, of course, acceleration and that kind of stuff, and might impact you about how you use them in future. So the key thing to show you for those is rounded versus not. If you just wanted a lithium-ion battery and you wanted it for Tamiyas, just buy a rounded one and be done with it, and it'll be fine. But there's some other concerns just to suggest. This here is a low central gravity, so it's actually a shallower height battery than my other ones. So that generally tends to fit in more places that others won't. This is known as a shorty, so it's technologically the same kind of thing as this big rectangular one, but is way smaller. And again, low central gravity, so it's actually shallower as well. That fits in, for example, my toms, and it fits between the decks quite well in a way that this is really hard work. So that's a win in that sense. You can get this into way more places. And this one is 120C on a 4,200 milliamp hour versus 100C on 5,200. These are probably kind of equivalent in how much current they can supply. This is Corrali, it might be some slightly better. Swings around. But the other thing I want to mention, and my favourite battery for these speed running events is what I ran in my drag hopper last year. This is a shorty, regular size shorty, so the same height as my longest wear battery there, but it's shorty, so it's 2/3 the overall length. But the key thing with this battery is it's 3S. So whilst it's 42 milliamp hour, it's a lithium high voltage 3S. So you can't use it in the brushed class, but you can use it in the brushless class. Last year you could run 3S batteries, and so it's 11.4 volts nominal compared to the 7.4 nominal of a 2S battery. If you look at anybody's speed runs, and you look at, for example, whenever Tom Lee does his speed tests of any of the cars he's trying, you'll see the rough rule of thumb, and you can scale the voltage just directly. So a 2S battery does 50 mile an hour, a 3S battery does 75. As in, you don't have to, it's not quite, you end up with drag and all of those kind of things and various resistance. But ball of park? Yeah, roughly speaking, a 3S will give you, another 50% bump in terms of speed. So bear that in mind. Now, for me to actually get the 50% bump that I ended up putting more boost and timing into the motor itself. But know that that's a thing. So if you're considering what you want to do for batteries, without knowing the chassis, and so I wouldn't necessarily rush to it, but at least be thinking about it. Think about a shorty battery. Think about perhaps a low centre of gravity shorty or an ultra low centre of gravity shorty as a 2S. And also consider whether there's a way of doing that for 3S. You'll find that there's people running with various types of 3S batteries. I don't think I saw anybody's that was quite as good as this one. Tom Lee got more speed out of his car, I'll acknowledge that. But I think his battery was not as well rated as this particular one. So I've said it previously, that's an Intellect lithium high voltage 3S battery. Keep an eye out for it. It is not very expensive, and it is very good for this kind of So number 5 on my list is a bit of an oddball. I'm expecting that many of you are going to crash at some point during the speedrun challenge, and we can't do much about preventing the crashes. We can't do much about making sure we've got spare parts because we don't yet know what the chassis is going to be. But what I will say is, make sure you've got a kit box of the things you need when out and about. Your speedrun is not going to be on your workbench. Your speedrun is not going to be in your front garden, back garden, road outside. I mean, it might be. If so, well done, you're very lucky. You're going to have to make some amount of trek to the location you're going to do your speedrun, even if it's only at your place of work. And so you can expect that you will have a crash. You can expect you'll have to do some amount of maintenance, repairs, adjustments, etc. Make sure you've got some amount of portable toolkit. Race drivers amongst you probably already have a pit box and that kind of stuff. For anybody who's just bashes around their front garden, just make sure you've got a toolkit of the likely tools that you run into using at home. So that's your screwdriver set, your socket set. It might be super glue, some of those kind of things. Zip ties, absolutely zip ties. It probably resonates with any of the people who race because they need these kind of things all the time. As in, like at a race meeting, you just need some way of allowing it to keep going. Now, it matters perhaps a bit less in terms of this speedrun challenge because we're doing it over a 4-week period. You can gather things back up and head home and fix and go back out again another time. But I had silly things like I lost a nut off somewhere, for example, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to look in the street for where this nut's gone, but I can manage to go raid my pit box for putting a new nut on and going out and rerunning. The same is true of battery chargers. If you've got any ability to charge a battery, or either have multiple batteries with you or be able to charge a battery whilst out and about, that's quite useful because it means you can put a top-up charge in. And so therefore you go out once and you can put in multiple runs and make some minor adjustments between them, etc. And that's it. That's my top 5 things for the 2026 Poor Boy Speedrun Challenge. do some of these 5 things, including finding a location right now, before any of the event kicks off, before we know what the chassis is, and I guarantee your whole event will run better as a result. I'm going to have fun running this. I know you're going to have fun running it. If you're in two minds, ping up questions on the Facebook group. Let's get as many people as possible entering it this year, and let's have a proper laugh, whatever the chassis is going to be. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.